welcome to On the Record. Those of you who joined us last week were probably amazed, as I was, by some of the latest research in the field of UFOs. There is so much to talk about, however, we were unable to fit it all into one program, so my guest again this week is UFO researcher, former state Senate candidate, and award-winning pilot John Lear. Mr. Lear, nice to have you here again.
Always a pleasure to be here, George.
To begin with, we have this concept of the people from other planets as little green men. Are they green from what you know? Are they all the same, or we got different kinds of them?
George, there's at least 70 different species, and probably more. But yes, as odd as it sounds, there are little green men. That's not the ones we usually see, though. We see the little gray ones. They're about 4.5 feet tall. And we see the ones that are called the Nordics. They're about 7 feet tall, look like us, but they're invariably blonde hair and blue-eyed. They're one of the species that we have on ice. One of their crashes we recovered.
Obviously, with different species, they have different motives. I mean, are there good aliens and bad aliens,
good
from what you
aliens
know?
and bad aliens, and all kinds of ways and reasons for interacting with us.
What are some of the reasons? Why would they be here?
Genetic experiments, trying to, you know, there's a misconception here. People think that our space brothers would bring us, you know, good things and teach us how to get rid of all our diseases. And you know, if you stop and think about it, that may not be the best thing, because if you had a society without any disease and everybody starts living 150 years, that creates a lot of problems. So they would not meddle in that way. You
believe, in part, that the movies E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, were not entirely just the creative products of some Hollywood director, that maybe there's more to that. Why don't you explain?
They were carefully guided by representatives from MJ-12, who is this organization that is in charge of the cover-up, in order to get us ready for the release of the information that there are indeed aliens. And in both those movies, they used small little creatures and in order to get us ready for this release of information.
So to prepare us that the idea of benevolent aliens from outer space are going to help us out.
Unfortunately, they're not so benevolent. So they made probably one of the most disastrous mistakes when E.T. was put out. At that time was before we discovered what I call the double cross or the grand deception. And they were trying to get us used to the benevolent little creatures, but that isn't the case.
Why don't you take a couple of minutes? Now, you've done as much research on UFOs as just about anyone, I'd imagine, and if you haven't done it, you know people who have. Where did it all start, and how have we put this picture together of where they came from and why they're here?
Well, the whole thing started in July 2nd, 1947. That was the first crash.
First crash of an alien spaceship.
Of an alien spaceship. July 6th is when they recovered it and sent it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. July 7th is when they held the press conference and told the people it was a weather balloon, which the press bought hook, line, and sinker. September of that year, President Truman established MJ-12, and the purpose of that was to study the saucers and cover up the existence of UFOs.
And you say we recovered alien bodies from that incident, right?
4 from that particular crash, yes.
And what'd they do with them?
They autopsied them. Dr. Detlef Bronk was the chief surgeon, so to speak. He was the one that named them EBEs. It stands for extraterrestrial biological entities. We captured 3 live EBEs. They were numbered in their order of capture: EBE-1, EBE-2, and EBE-3.
Where did we capture? Where did this happen?
In different crashes. EBE-1 lived with an Air Force colonel between 1949 and 1952. The EBEs are kept in an electromagnetic facility called a YY-2. It was designed by a Dr. Eric Wang, who worked directly for Dr. Kissinger, who has been in this cover-up since the very beginning. The reason they had to create an electromagnetic facility is the fact that the EBEs are so advanced, they're at least 500 million years advanced from us, and probably more. They can move by thought.
Move by thought.
And they can also disappear. But they can't move by thought through electromagnetic facilities. So they built this facility. There was 2, one in Los Alamos and one either at Edwards or up at the test site.
At Groom Lake, Nevada.
At Groom Lake. Now there's still one EBE still living, EBE-3, and there is a videotape that eventually is going to be released to the public, and it's an interview with him. As hard as that may sound, as hard as that may be to believe, there is a videotape of an interview with EBE-3.
And what is this language that the interviewers are?
I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know. But on this trip I told you I took gathering all this information, a guy in Albuquerque handed me 25 secret CIA memos. And if anything can be humorous in all of this, one of these memos, in the body of the text, it said, by the way, EBE-3 wants to see the ocean. We better make the arrangements or he'll disappear again. So while he couldn't get out of this facility, he could make himself disappear and cause him a lot of trouble.
Now, can they exist among us? Is that what you're saying, or do they have to have this special environment?
They have special environment, special air. It's my understanding they can only last about 20 minutes in this air.
You were saying also these gray ones are the ones that we see most of the time, and you said that most of that there are a lot of different motives for them being here. The gray ones, what kind of a deal we got going with them? Is that the bunch that you suggest we've made a deal with for military technology?
Well, I think we made a deal with them, and their ultimate, what they want to do is regenerate their own race. Now, apparently they've either had some kind of nuclear accident, or they're on the backside of a evolutionary genetic curve, and they're going downhill instead of uphill. In other words, in the autopsies, of which I have 2, we found out that their digestive system is atrophied. They can't eat through their mouth anymore. You know how they eat? Well, these cattle mutilations, they take the hormones and the enzymes from those cattle and they spread it on their skin, and their skin absorbs the nutrients and then excretes the waste back through their skin. And if you read Whitley Strieber's book or listen to him talk, he talks about when he's seen them doing this to their skin, and they're scraping the waste off.
Now, these cattle mutilations, there's been a film made about that, and perhaps in a couple of minutes we can take a look at some excerpts of that.
Yeah, Strange Harvest was a good one, but another thing that happened here on March 4th, there was a documentary released on the best UFO photos that have been taken so far, including 1 minute and 38 seconds of videotape. Now, what happened is in November, this guy took these photos, took it into the TV station. They thought it was great, but nobody would believe it. So they spent 3 months checking the validity of the, authenticating the videotape and checking out the credibility of the witness. And when they had it all down, they put out this documentary, 30 minutes. I mean, it's ironclad. They're here. But do you think it got on the network? No, it was just showed locally in Pensacola.
We have some of that, and perhaps when we come back we can take a look at it. So stay with us for more of On the Record.